Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you very much for stopping by again. We have had quite an exciting time this last month of November. I have taken several days off, as a number of people have, in part to process the events and to understand where we stand now, and also to get some business done as well. So traffic has just been very thick as everybody's trying to catch up with what they have lost in the past. The demonstrations and what have you that so embroiled the country for the month of November are over, and they have been over for several days. Here in this area is finally closing up out in the west, where they had a much more difficult time, and it's been a slower process to unravel. But any of it, should be near the end, if not completely over with. It will be soon, I suspect. Any event, there are two stories going on simultaneously here, and they are different. They are connected in a sense, but not really. They're actually separate. They have different global or international impact and local impacts. So let's take a look at both of them. I'm just going to go through and describe them very simply. If you don't realize what's been going on for the last month, there are videos here that can certainly help with that. It's not the end of the world. The demonstrations, while very bad in a sense, in that they had terrific economic impact and they hit many of the most vulnerable people, nonetheless, they are over, and with very little violence and very little destruction of property, private and public, as is very common throughout the entirety of Latin America. But here, not so much at all. As a part of that, this particular social effort, this social, so to speak, demonstration was not particularly important globally and got relatively little attention. It was people who follow Panama, of course, they read articles, et cetera, and so forth. And so did I, naturally. But there were very few. Today's world is so tied up into knots that our little kerfuffle, so to speak, our little dispute here, well, very important to us, really got lost in the shuffle of the Ukraine and Gaza and Israel and all the things going on in there in the South China Sea. And there's always something happening, and big time things are happening that really deeply concern people all over the planet and can take many lives, 1,000 times more lives, 5,000 times more lives than were lost here, which is really only two that were directly attributable to people, one man and a gun, killing two protesters. It was pretty disgusting sort of display, but it happens once in a while, and that is pretty small. A couple others died in an accident and so on, but really, although it was made to sound like it was a horrific situation here, and the expat websites that make the money off this sort of thing had a wonderful time with it and came up with all sorts of things, that really is not going to impress anybody who has actually been through any of the others. I've been through a coup d'etat, I've seen a lot of things going on in all the years, over 50 years I've worked all over the world. And this is important, but it happened within the context of a democracy, and it never got to the point of senseless, mindless violence and destruction. It simply didn't. And it again stresses that even when we have a very serious affair, and it goes on for as long as this one did in Panama, it is so much less damaging than those that are common elsewhere. As a result, we don't get that much attention, and that's a blessing. So that sense is, it came to an end. It came to an end because the Supreme Court decided to bring it to an end. And I think, simply put, the justices had been in contact with each other throughout the entire affair. As it got nearer and nearer the end, it became apparent they themselves were going to have to make a decision and step in. That they had been working on that before they officially announced it, before they accepted the complaints that came in and began the official discussion. They got their opinions in from every legal authority, every lawyer, anybody who wanted to contributed. They did quite a job on it over a matter of several days, And I think they had decided the damage done to the economy, the damage done to jobs, to the incomes, and everything else, enough is enough, and we're going to bring it to a stop. I think that was their primary concern, is to stop the bleeding, and as we move into December, which is an important month here. So they literally said, okay, this is an unconstitutional contract, and not only that, but from now on there will never be mining in Panama, given the Constitution's wording. And I think disappointed some of the opponents because they didn't have any reason to go out and protest. They had none. There were people there who really were seeing this as a broader political perspective, and they weren't really concerned about the mine. They were concerned about themselves. So they weren't terribly happy about it, but it happened, and it had its effect. Very important that it stop all this nonsense. Not nonsense, but I mean this constant running in circles, chasing our own tail is not coming to any conclusion. So it stopped that, and now it is in the hands of the people as a whole. We are entering we're already into an election campaign for the May 5th elections next year, where, as most of you already know, every elective office in the country comes up for election, and it's not just a portion of them, it's everybody. So it is extraordinarily important. We have thousands of candidates for, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of positions, maybe thousands. Really, it's hard to keep track. And the opinions on this particular topic are starting to come out from the various candidates for the presidency. And I mean, they're very general statements, okay? But obviously it's going to get more and more specific as time goes by. Fine. That's what's meant to happen. Now it's in the hands of the citizens. Now we sit and we listen to them. Here people really do listen to the televised debates and candidates. All of them, even the candidates that are the independent and the smaller ones and so forth, they get their chance too. And so it goes. The election will be clearly an important watershed for this particular, for this nation. But it's important that it happen in this way so that all sectors of society can be heard from, and there can be a vote, and people will make their feelings, not just on this issue, but many of them, clear in what direction they want to take after this. Or it may show 3 or 4 directions they want to take, and no one have a solid majority. But we will have a president and a vice president, because they are the ones who receive the most votes. They run as a ticket. They win. There's no runoff election or anything of that sort. That was true the last time when the winners got 33% of the vote, and number 2 got 31%, and then the others candidates split the rest of the vote. So with only a third of the electorate backing them, that's the current government managed to take office, and also, though, had a majority in the National Assembly, and that's very possibly not going to happen this time around. We don't know. All will become clear. So that's the important thing there. Other than that, there are a number of other things to be said very quickly, and I won't go into detail at this point. I don't want to. I think we need to hear other people talk. But for the moment, this is definitely going to have a dramatic impact financially on the country if it continues in this manner. Now, is there anything that can be done to sort this thing out? And the answer, of course, yes. And I mean, it goes into the legal stage, the next stage of the whole dispute is it goes before an arbitration panel. Arbitration is not exactly the same as going to the Supreme Court, for example. Arbitration panels, it depends. There's a lot of different stories you'll hear about them, and they really depend on the circumstances and everything else. The simple point is this. If the parties involved can come to some sort of agreement that somehow satisfies both groups, and that can be whatever, that they agree to that, then the arbitration panel is likely to say, well, okay, you don't need us, there's no need for arbitration. You've made your decision, goodbye. Now, is that going to happen? Is it? I don't have any idea at all. But I'll just say that you don't throw in the towel, so to speak, and think nothing can change. You need to understand this system is much more agile and plastic, so to speak, than that when it comes to arbitration. Any event, the worst case scenario, of course, is we have a terrific loss of income and jobs. It's as simple as that. Now, the second drama that unfolds, of course, is the canal itself and climate change and its impact on the water system here, the whole weather system of the last decade or so, particularly. Now, you can claim that it's, as most do, humans are a big contributor, or you can insist that's not the case, it's other things. Nobody cares. It's politics, forget it. We are facing a really serious situation. We know it, and to deny that it exists or that it has anything to do with climate is silly, and we're going to ignore you. It just boils down to. So the idea is not you go somewhere else to argue about whether or not, how to define it and where it's coming from, but just accept the fact that we got problems, and they're serious, and they stare you right in the face. And the canal is a big one. Now, it's unfortunate here that we get the news, too, that the dry season, the traditional dry season, normally begins around the 15th of December, began at the beginning of December. So it's already been 2 weeks, a little bit more, that we're in the dry season. That this can actually be said because of the way the weather patterns operate here, a long story. But it's true, we're into the dry season. We haven't had any rain in this period. We're not likely to have a lot of rain for quite some time. So let's keep in mind that in the process here, we're already losing a great deal of business on the canal, and there's no question. If one person said, have you expected me to talk about Bloomberg? Well, I read Bloomberg every day, of course. But that's where really most of the emphasis, most of the readership is the canal itself. Our disagreement with First Quantum, while it definitely gets some attention, is a minor compared to the canal. And it's people who could come down and use the canal, but they have to wait so long and so forth. A long story short, they are going the longer trips around the tip of South America or across the Atlantic through the Mediterranean down the Suez Canal or around the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa and so on to get from the bulk of the shipments done, and the bulk of those come from East Asia to the Gulf and eastern seaboards of the United States and Canada to the north. So these are the areas that receive most of the goods and send most of the goods. The U.S. is the biggest user of the canal by a wide margin. And the others, including China, of course, which is the second largest, and a number of others, obviously, Thailand, Vietnam, so on, Philippines, they are also very actively using it, and they are finding ways to get it done. And as one person put it recently, a shipper, it takes longer, but at least I know when my stuff is going to arrive. But with the canal, we don't know when we set out whether we're going to get there in time or not, or whether the canal is going to have to reduce the number of passages again. So people are getting into the habit of working around that. And this is a big season for the shipping, Christmas and all that, although much of that has already been done. There's still a lot of it going on. There's a lot of everything going on. So we are losing substantial amounts of business, but we haven't any choice in that. And this is, again, not something that we can play games with. We have to be extremely serious. Now, that's moving on, and that is what is really the global significance, and locally, we're more involved in our concerns about what's going on in the streets. They're more concerned about what's going on in the oceans. All right. So both of them have obviously negative implications. And in the midst of which we're going to have an election campaign. Isn't this fun? Good Lord. So that's the way these things happen, and this society can handle it. All right. I'm not losing sleep over that. The places are going to fall apart. But it's going to be a very tough one. Especially, and this is a critical thing that has not yet occurred, so we don't know if it's going to occur, but before that May 5th election, we're going to have a very good idea of whether we're going to have a decent rainy season. And if we have another one even remotely like the one we just had, whoa. All right, so let's not go down that rabbit hole right at the moment. Hopefully that will not occur. An effort to increase the amount of water available to the canal the project had been requested by the Canal Authority, some 4 years ago, and they just didn't do it because it means pushing people out and flooding areas and so on. And well, all right, now they're running around trying to get it done. It takes time for that. It's not going to immediately take place. So this is very damaging too if we cannot get people back in the habit of seeing the canal as operating. We've already had damage done. It just gets way worse if it goes into another year. So that's cheerful news and everything. I'm focused more on what other areas can we expand in and do something to improve economic activity here that have nothing to do with the canal or nothing to do with the copper mine. And that's where I put my effort myself, to the extent that I make suggestions and offer help and so forth, what have you. I don't know whether it has any impact or not, but I think all of us have a responsibility to look at it from that perspective while the citizens work out the rest of the problems and we see how things move politically in months to come. I'm definitely not throwing in the towel on Panama by any stretch of the imagination, and you shouldn't either, because I'll tell you, one thing I can assure you of, and I know this from experience and from people I know and so on, nobody in the financial community and the IMF, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, all these institutions that have been very supportive of Panama, none of them want Panama to fail. We're the success story of Latin America. And right now it looks like we're blowing ourselves up. Okay, well, it looks like that. But these folks really are upset by this. And we may slide off and actually be marked down to less than investment grade, to step down. But there's going to be every effort to try to be reasonable and work with us and try to be supportive from outside. Because, there are other countries that have two others that are significant, Uruguay and Chile, in terms of their acceptance in the financial community, but Uruguay is caught between Argentina and Brazil, and it's a complicated situation for them. And Chile has its own internal situation that's not always perfect, but they're doing better than a lot of other countries. The key point is this, is they're both way down there in South America. The thing about Panama is that we are, like it or not, we are in the middle. We are in the center of everything. We are the hub for shipping, we're the hub for air travel, we're the hub for the internet that's been strengthened over the last few years. We've got what we need. We got the biggest, second largest free trade zone in the world, and it's operating. It's been doing quite well. So much has gone on, and so many things are positive. What failed here was the upper class, unfortunately, just lost their contact with the people. That's really what happened to the first one. That people were completely unprepared. So a lot of things that could have been said and done in the early stages weren't, because they were so unprepared. It was shameful, frankly. But that's the way it goes sometimes. So we all have to work together to get to the next level up. This situation here is better than the one I see faced in so many other countries on the planet. And in the long term, remember, everything is comparative. It's relative to everything else. And as long as we're relative to the rest of Latin America, if not number one, we can be number 3 and survive. Don't worry. If we look like we're coming back at some stage, rest assured, Panama's got a future. And it will have gone through this, and it will never happen again, because it will have learned a lesson. All right? Every nation learns lessons. But we didn't have to have a civil war to do that. We've done it without that, and hopefully never will. So, I don't know, why? We're too small. Whatever the case may be, we are going through it, and it looks all negative and dark. Now, I say don't jump to conclusions. If you get a kick out of reading stuff like that, there are plenty of websites that will give it to you. I intend to only raise it when it seems to be appropriate, because it will be appropriate from time to time just to bring people up to date. But I'm not turning into a news site here. I'm not going to be the threat of the week, the danger of the week. Oh, the look of shock in people's faces on the cover photos they have for their videos. I understand that's the way you get traffic. I understand it's clickbait. I understand. I've been in I've run internet sites now for almost 30 years, so I'm very familiar with them, and I know what happens that way. It's not going to happen here, but I won't forget it. Of course, keep an eye on it as both of these dramas unfold in the months to come. In the meantime, people ask, is this a good time to buy real estate? Well, it's perfectly legitimate, or buy or rent. Perfectly legitimate question if you're, coming here. And I want to point out, people kept coming down, folks like yourself. I mean, people that met with me or me and if they're looking for a place to stay. Maurice and I were just stopping to chat. It was their first visit. It was me. It was a little frustrating at periods when they couldn't get out to the west if they wanted to, but most of them were actually aimed at the city, and we got on fine. I got a lot done. It was a little bit more challenging, but it got done. So now that is not a problem. You can come. Nothing here has been used against foreigners or expatriates. I mean, not at all. We're not the issue, and we better not become the issue, but we're not. And so can you find good deals? Yes, but you got to come down. And that's the key. You have to be here, and you do not buy anything over the internet, no matter how cheap it may sound to you. Don't even think about it. I've had people do that, and I cannot believe the problems they've gotten for themselves. But boy, don't even think about it. But if you do, you're safe. You come down, we're all right. You get in. It's not, there's no problems going on. We welcome you, and you have an opportunity. There's a window. And it may be open for a while. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. I'm not here to make predictions, but I'm telling you, unquestionably, we can do well in terms of with recommendations in helping people who are looking for a place to rent or buy. Whether it's Maurice and I isn't the point. Whether any real estate agent worth two bits, just find one that you're comfortable with and you think is representing your interests as opposed to an agency's interest or their interests. But in any event, whatever the case may be, keep us on your list. I hope it continues to stop by. It hasn't stopped people from signing up here or elsewhere, including the newsletter. I may have a newsletter come out, but it will not come out until early next year. We need a little bit more information, not just more information. We've got to get through the holidays intact. We will, and be cheerful for a change. And then in January, we get down to the nitty-gritty. This is normal. We'll see what happens. The world is a strange and wondrous place at the moment. One never knows what the future holds. But I sit here hoping and thinking and believing that we're going to come through it fine. Thank you very much for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you again.